Okay, so I'm in the middle of still making my next big video essay, and right now I don't care about the algorithm because we just got a brand new Monster Hunter Wilds trailer, and I desperately want to sit down and analyze that real quick because Monster Hunter is one of my favorite franchises. So that's what we're going to do right now. Okay, but seriously, there is actually quite a bit of new stuff in this trailer that I'm curious and I want to talk about. So, let's just try to go through this real quick. It's only about 3 minutes long, so I'll try to keep this below 2 hours. Um, but yeah, so we get a few story cutscenes. One thing that's actually kind of interesting right there is that I'm pretty sure the Palico actually spoke with voice acting properly, which I know Rise added a lot more voice acting with like the hunters calling out special attacks and stuff, but I don't think they had voice acted Palicos, so that's actually kind of a new thing. We get a few teasers for the story as well, but to be frank, I don't play Monster Hunter for the story, so we're just going to skip right past that. That's actually the first of one of the new monsters that we saw, but we'll get to him more later. And apparently these things are called Keratinauts. And yeah, we saw these in the last trailer, and we know that lightning can strike the ones with spikes in order to, presumably power them up in some way. And then we get some more shots showing. So another big mechanic about uh, this game is that each of the maps apparently has two states that it swaps between, and that's what this is kind of showing off. So it goes between like a lush grassland and a sort of desert region. And again, that's something we saw in the last trailer, but it seems like they're really highlighting that a lot more. And then here's another one of the new monsters that we see in the trailer. This is obviously okay. There we go. Back to normal gameplay. Um. So yeah. So more confirmation that we have the slinger. That's back. And yeah, the more environmental effects and everything. Here's the storm that transitions between the two states of the map. And then that's all pre-rendered, but it looks like that's probably this is probably a actual hazard on the map that you can fall into during these storms. It looks like this I believe is just part of a cutscene, but I think that's just kind of highlighting that mechanic for when it becomes relevant during gameplay. And then we transition back into gameplay here. There we go. And we actually see a few interesting things with the Great Sword. So at first, the moveset looks pretty normal. We saw a pretty straightforward overhead slash and a dodge roll. But then here, we get our first interesting thing. So that move right there, I've already seen some people talking about how that looks like the Surge Slash combo. And I'll probably edit in some footage in a second to kind of show a comparison between that and what the Surge Slash combo looks like in Rise. So some people are saying that that confirms that that's returning. However, looking at it again in Rise, I don't think that's as definitive as some people are making it out to be. Because it looks like the sort of wide swing part of the Surge Slash combo is actually pretty much identical to the wide slash as part of the normal Greatsword moveset. And really the only difference is a slight difference in the speed of the animation. So it looks like it could go either way. And in fact, at one point in the trailer, I'm pretty sure we see the we see the Greatsword user pull out their greatsword and do an overhead slash, like a normal charge slash, right out of movement, which would normally be impossible if they have Surge Slash equipped, because that's the move that replaces. Now to be fair, this is all just a collection of disparate clips, so they could easily actually, yeah, that was it right there. Right after this Surge Slash combo, he goes from walking right into a charged attack. So that would normally be impossible. But it is also two different clips that could easily have two different switch skill loadouts. But again, I don't even know if this is really confirmation that switch skills even are in the game. I'm kind of leaning towards no. Don't get me wrong, I love switch skills, and I especially love the Surge Slash combo, and I hope that it's in the game as part of Greatsword's moveset. However, I think that this is not nowhere near as definitive as some people want it to be. That could easily just be a normal wide slash, and then that is totally something that is normally impossible. with the surge slash combo. And yeah, here he does it again. So I'm leaning away from surge slash being, at least I don't think this confirms surge slash. It could still be in the game, but who knows. Then we see a lot more interaction between the small monsters and the big monsters, which I think is really cool. Like, just having a much bigger focus on all these monster interactions is pretty rad. And then here, we actually get confirmation on a theory that I, and admittedly many others, posited, which is that we're getting weapon swapping as an official mechanic. So yeah, we see him straight up pull out a heavy bowgun and put away his greatsword while riding on his raptor, which is apparently called a secret, but I'll get to that later because the website was updated with new information. And yeah, so now we can officially bring 2 weapons on a hunt with us. And that's actually really interesting because I'm curious how that's going to affect builds and build diversity, because if you can equip any 2 different weapons, that means that, but your armor, like, it doesn't change, then you have to consider, like, what skills do you want to equip to try and accommodate for the fact that you're bringing those 2 weapons, because almost every weapon has different skills that it actually wants. So, like, do you go for 2 weapons that synergize? Like, for example, Charge Blade, which is my favorite weapon, and Gun Lance have a lot of skills that they share in common. Because they both want artillery, they both want that ability that gives them an extra shell, and stuff like that. So they could easily, like, that could be a good combo to bring on a hunt because they share so many skills. Whereas, like, actually the example here with greatsword and heavy bowgun have a lot of very different skills that they would want, I imagine. So that might actually be a harder, like, set of weapons to design an armor set around. So maybe they're changing the armor skills to accommodate that, but I think it would be actually more interesting if they didn't, because something that's been kind of a thing with all of the recent Monster Hunter games is you have so many skills that you can equip. So it's not like it would be that hard to equip some skills. It just means you have to get rid of some of your comfort skills in order to accommodate the 2 different weapons. So that could be an interesting entire mechanic on its own. The other thing I'm curious about is if they're going to add weapon swapping from your mount like this, then does that mean that maybe the camps are going to be nerfed? Because that was another thing that they changed in World and further enhanced in Rise, is they've made it so that, like, right now you can change basically your entire loadout. Like, you can change your armor, you can change your weapons, you can refill your items, like your healing items and whatnot, in your camp. And for some reason, this trailer doesn't really confirm or deny anything, and so I don't really have any reason to necessarily believe this, but the vibe I'm getting from this game is that it feels like they're going to nerf the camp mechanics back to maybe pre-world and make it so that it's a lot harder to like or at least that you cannot, like, change out your equipment and stuff in the camp anymore. And then this weapon swapping mechanic might actually be the sort of compromise that they introduce in order to sort of make up for the fact that they're nerfing the camp. So now they're making it so that you can swap weapons from your mount to give you a little bit more variety and be able to do some stuff like that on the fly in exchange for no longer being able to change anything at your camp. Now, like I said, that is a complete shot in the dark. I have no reason to necessarily believe that there's no confirmation or evidence backing that up, but I think that could be a really interesting direction for the game to go. And then, yeah, we see him just go straight from the greatsword to the moveset. And then there we see a jump move. And so now this is interesting. It took me a second to fully process that. And I didn't know why they were highlighting it until I watched it a couple more times. But this is a new stance for the greatsword. Like, that isn't a move. That feels like a stance that you can then perform other moves from. It reminds me of the EI stance that they added to Longsword, where you could sheath the Longsword in a slightly different way and then perform a couple of new moves from that stance. It seems like they're adding that to Greatsword, and if they're doing that, that kind of makes me feel like they're adding it to maybe all of the weapons. Like, they're adding just this new, like, kind of stance mechanic, and then that could be, like, that could be the L2 mechanic of this game, because, like, in Rise they added wire bugs that you primarily used with the L2 button, because most of Monster Hunter is of course played with the face buttons, and then the R2 is like your special attack, and then L2 is like the one button that kind of was like left to the wayside. Until World, or rather specifically Iceborne, added a bunch of new weapon mechanics that were tied to the L2 button, and then Rise expanded on that by adding all the wire bug mechanics tied to the L2 button. So this kind of feels like the L2 mechanic of this game, where like pressing L2 would enter this stance, and then that would that would allow you to perform more moves, because then we also immediately out of that stance we see Greatsword perform another brand new move, which is clearly some kind of like counter interrupt. It actually kind of reminds me of Dragon's Dogma, because in Dragon's Dogma the Greatsword in that game can interrupt moves with charge attacks, and so yeah, he does this big upward swing, and then it follows it up with another new attack, and then this is like a whole new heavy bowgun style thing, and like that's a new Greatsword move. And it's kind of hard to... Let me look at that again. Yeah, you can't really tell if he was in the stance at the start of that, because it clearly is... They cut to it mid-move. But it feels like that could be another move that you can perform out of that sort of alternate stance that they have with the Greatsword. So I think that might be how they're sort of incorporating the quote-unquote super moves, although there'll probably be... Like, this is the main team we're talking about, the team that made World, not Rise. So I suspect that the quote-unquote super moves will be a lot less flashy and over the top compared to Rise. But that seems like how they're probably going to implement it, is through this sort of extra stance system, which could be cool if that's like a new thing for every weapon. For all we know, that could just be for Greatsword, but you know. And then yeah, we get to see the SOS mechanic, so that's just like in World. You know, you shoot off a thing with your slinger and more hunters join you. And then this is something that's really interesting too. So what seems to happen is the Greatsword user, he blocks an attack and then enters a sort of clash. And what I feel like this is another universal mechanic, because this doesn't seem like something that Greatsword would be the only weapon that can do this. But maybe it's limited to only weapons that can block, because that looks like when he starts this. Okay, actually, okay. If we look at it like frame by frame, real quick, doing some real deep analysis. So he's in the focus stance that we saw earlier. That like, you know, he's clearly in that alternate stance there, and then he goes into a guard from that stance, and then that starts the clash with the monster. So maybe that's a unique Greatsword move. I could also see it just being a... Like, that might be a move that's not necessarily on every weapon, but it's on every weapon that can block. Because that seems like something that would be more than... I mean, for one, it's clearly the animation's a little bit jank, which tells me that it's not necessarily designed for one specific weapon. Because you could see the Greatsword, like, clipping through the monster a little bit here. So, like, this feels like a general mechanic that maybe, like, all shield weapons, so like Lance, Gun Lance, Charge Blade, etc., can perform in order to sort of pin the monster in place. Because then the main benefit is, of course, when you have allies in co-op, or even just your Palico, and in fact, you can see them doing it there, where they can then smash on the monster while you're pinning it in place with that clash. And, like, maybe that becomes, like, a button-mashing QTE. And then, like, if you win, you, like, knock the monster back, and if you lose, they knock you back and deal some damage. But yeah, that's really interesting. However, I also saw that they updated the website, and I did take a little bit of a glance at it while I was analyzing that video during some of the cuts. So yeah, so if we go to the hunting section, so... We've got, obviously, all the weapons are returning, which I think that's expected. I am curious to see if they're going to add new weapons. That's obviously not confirmed just yet. I think that'll probably be saved for a later trailer that's closer to release, if they do add a new weapon. It really feels like we're overdue for at least one new weapon, and they almost always add at least two anytime they add a new weapon. So I have a feeling we'll probably see a couple, if we get that. But yeah, we get full confirmation So that thing that I was looking at earlier, yeah, it is absolutely an alternate stance. And the way they describe it, it definitely seems like it's not like a greatsword specific thing. This almost seems like it is 100% a general weapon mechanic that they're adding to this game. So I assume every weapon is going to have this sort of focus stance that will allow them to perform like super moves or extra counters or something. And that seems really interesting. I am curious. It says you can use focus mode to pinpoint monster weaknesses. I don't know if that's just because like it lets you do super attacks or what. It's kind of unclear. Um like it doesn't seem to like slow down time or anything, not to mention that that wouldn't really make sense in multiplayer. Like how would you have some kind of time slow mechanic? So like I'm not sure what it means by like making it easier to aim your attacks during hunts. Uh and not to mention making it easier. So like this is a little unclear to me. It seems like it's mostly just a super attack mechanic. That maybe they're just trying like I think Paul marketing is maybe spinning some weird words over here. Um because like that was like a super counter that they do. So like we have dark confirmation that like yeah, the side slash that is a new like focus move on top of that counter. So like I don't see how that necessarily makes hunting easier for newcomers if you have to time that parry or something, but who knows. And then yeah, we get more information on the slinger here, which is basically just the same thing. And then the hook slinger, which to be fair, I think that was in Iceborne, the ability to like gather materials with the slinger without having to get off your mount. Like that seems like it's pretty much the same. Although that was a really large distance. Now that I think, look at that. Like look at how far away the hunter grabs that. Like that was like 30 feet away. So it looks like they've really made it generous how far you can gather materials with this. Um, but yeah, and then if we go back to the main website, we can look at Living World. And let me look here. So yeah, changing environments. We get a little bit more details on the actual nature of like how environments change. And this seems to confirm that there are multiple maps because it says each hunting locale. So it might not be one huge interconnected map for everything. It seems like the phrasing here is suggesting that it's pretty much going to be like World and every other previous Monster Hunter game, where there's just distinct locations that you can hunt in. So that's kind of the vibe that I'm getting. They could, like, maybe this phrasing could just refer to like different zones on one big super map, but I feel like that's kind of stretching things a little bit. Um, right now, I'm leaning towards the idea that you still have to load into distinct maps for each of the different biomes, but it is confirmed that each map will have this mechanic where it switches between two different locations, and one of the locations will be like a lot harsher and more violent with harder monsters, and then the other one will be like vibrant and brimming with life. So this seems like it's going to be a really interesting universal mechanic, and you just know that they are going to 100% introduce there's going to be a volcano map, and it's going to be molten hot during one of its phases and then freezing cold during one of its other phases, because they have done that mechanic in, I feel like, almost every game. Like there's like I feel like, because there were several games like Monster Hunter 4 I think had a map where where it was exactly that. Like it was a volcano map that was hot during one time, and then it was the same map again but during nighttime, so that it was like cold. And there's a desert map where they did that as well. So that feels like something that they are always going to do. But it'll be interesting to see that change happening in real time, as opposed to it being two distinct maps, which is I think going to be super interesting. And then here, yeah, we saw what I was talking about earlier about like there's so many monsters like that are on the map at once. It's kind of insane. Like I know these are mostly small monsters, but like just in this one shot, there's just like dozens of them. And so it's kind of crazy. And then yeah, we finally get more info on the mount. So yeah, it's apparently called a secret. That's how I'm pronouncing that. I feel like that's what they're going for. Secret. Yeah, it's got to be secret, right? Like it's a pun on secret. I don't know why it's called secret. Is it a secret monster? Is it like that? That seems like some kind of pun that I don't get yet because I haven't played the game. But I personally love this thing. It looks so cool, and I love the idea of having a raptor companion. Not to mention it's got like the dinosaur lore accurate feathers, and it can fly and everything. Um, Plus, like this is very clearly an evolution of the dog mechanics from Rise. With obviously, I think they changed it to be a raptor specifically because they wanted to add gliding and potentially other mechanics to it. Although, again, if you look at the screenshot, like, it looks like there's over 100 of these goddamn tiny monsters on this map. Like, there's so many of them. Like, in World, you usually would never see a pack of more than, like, 4 or 5 at the most. But, like, goddamn, just look at this. There's so many monsters. Like, I might need to upgrade my graphics card to play this game. Oh, man. But yeah, and then yeah, they confirm the weapon swapping mechanic in a little bit more detail. They do say you can switch between two weapons of your choice. I think some people were theorizing that it might be limited to like one melee and one ranged weapon for some reason, just because that's all we've seen in the trailers so far. But no, it's definitely any two weapons, which I think that makes sense. I think that was kind of obvious. And then yeah, this talks more about the Windward Plains, which we've seen lots of. And then yeah, we get a little bit more on those monsters. So this is that big red guy that was chasing the I can't even remember the names of the weird armadillo monsters. The Dasha Guma. And this guy, he seems like an interesting little guy. He's got tiny little beady little eyes, which that makes me feel like he's probably in more sandy areas. So like the sand doesn't get in his eyes as much. And then oh whoops, got away from it. And then yeah, and then we got the Chatacabra, the sort of amphibian guy who he kinda this reminds me of the Tetsukabra, so that might hint that Tetsukabra is coming back because he shares the same suffix, I think is the term. Not to mention he's also an amphibian, and he looks like he might even share some of the same bones. So yeah, this guy looks like a lot of fun. I'm really also his arms look like was it like avocados or no, not avocados. What vegetable does this look like? I it's whatever. But yeah, these monsters look pretty fun. I like these guys already. But yeah, I think that just about does it. We get a little bit more on the characters as well, I guess. But again, I'm not about to do some theorizing on the story. But yeah, we got the Hunter, our Palico, which, like I said, it seems like they might have voice acting for your cat this time, which that'll be new. This will be your new handler. Hopefully, they're not as annoying as the World handler, but we'll see. Then we got Gemma, our Smithy. And this appears to be the story kid, who will presumably have a mysterious story about his missing parents or whatever. So that just about does it with Monster Hunter Wilds. So yeah, lots of really interesting stuff in this trailer. Really, really looking forward to seeing more about the game, especially that focused stance mechanic. I could already imagine, like, there's no way that the EI stance hasn't been rolled into that, which I think is kind of fair considering that Longsword got like so many new mechanics in Rise. Is kind of ludicrous how over the top Longsword was compared to almost every other weapon. So it kind of balancing things out by maybe shifting Longsword into that and giving every weapon a mechanic like it, I think makes a lot of sense. Really looking forward to, of course, Charge Blade as my main. Like, I can already imagine that the focus stance for that could be wild with how much stuff Charge Blade can do. Also, Gun Lance. I really hope they still keep Blast Dash. In fact, I could totally see the focus stance being how you do Blast Dash, because that is kind of like a weird alternate move from normal. So like you enter focus stance and then pressing a button is how you do Blast Dash. So hopefully that's how we keep that. But yeah, thank you all for watching, and if you like this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you want to see me make more Monster Hunter videos in the future. And if you don't subscribe, I will make more Monster Hunter videos anyways because I love Monster Hunter. But I hope that you tune in for the next one. Thank you for watching.